Logan Paul got beat up over the weekend, and a fighting champ threatened Jake Paul. And I got both those stories coming up for you right now on IO. I'm Mackenzie, and make sure to subscribe if you're new here. Now for our first story, Logan Paul appeared at WrestleMania 37 over the weekend, and not only was he not given a warm welcome by the crowd, he also got taken out by Kevin Owens after he beat Sami Zayn in a grueling match. When Logan Paul arrived at WrestleMania as a special guest, he was met with lots of booing, and it was pretty clear WWE fans were not happy to see him there. After Owens beat Zayn, Logan Paul came into the ring to congratulate Owens, but in the process, got into a scuffle with Zayn and pushed him off the mat. Zayn walked away in a state of rage while Paul picked Owens' arm up in front of the crowd. Then as Logan Paul was trying to congratulate Owens, the boos from the crowd got even louder, and Owens delivered another stunner to the YouTube star. And Paul sold the finisher perfectly while the former Universal Champion stood over him and shouted, quote, "This is my ring." And yeah, he definitely proved that it was his ring. Logan's little brother Jake reacted to the news on Twitter, saying, quote, "Logan just got stunnered on WWE. At this pace, it's really starting to smell like a rise of the Pauls part 2. And next up for our second story, onto some Jake Paul news. So Jake has been picking fights with a lot of MMA fighters and boxers over the last year. And boxing star Claressa Shields has clapped back against the YouTube star's arrogant attitude towards the sport. The undisputed women's light middleweight champ Shields, who's undefeated in her 11 pro career, has now called out both Jake and Logan Paul. Shields is hoping Askren beats Jake in their upcoming fight, as she slammed the YouTuber for claiming that boxing is, quote, easy. Shields told my betting sites, quote, "I like when the older fighters come back, like Roy Jones versus Mike Tyson." Adding, quote, "I think Jake Paul and his brother are more like clown shows, to be honest, but they're making money. They're using their platform, but it's not real boxing. Respect to them for training, I guess, but I'd much rather see Mike Tyson versus Evander Holyfield or something." Then she talked about the upcoming Logan Paul versus Mayweather Jr. fight, which has now been delayed. Adding, quote, "I don't want to see Floyd Mayweather beat up Logan Paul, but Floyd can do whatever he wants. He's accomplished everything, so he gets to call his own shots. It's just something I don't want to see." She then shut down Jake Paul's claims that being a YouTuber is harder than being a boxing star, finishing off the interview with somewhat of a warning to Jake, saying, quote, "I would whoop Jake Paul's ass though, just because he thinks boxing is easy." As mentioned before, Jake Paul will be fighting Ben Askren this Saturday, April 17th, and I am incredibly interested to see what happens. In my opinion, if Jake loses, that could potentially end his budding boxing career. But if he wins, we could see him start taking fights with current champions. Because say what you want about the Paul brothers, there's a lot of money in what they're doing. I still just can't believe both brothers are doing boxing at the same time. Like, why do they always need to do the same thing that the other one does? But that's just honestly a whole other issue, honestly. Guys, let me know your thoughts below, and which brother do you think is the better fighter? I think at this point Jake is probably the better fighter, but for some reason Logan is the one getting the bigger fights, so that doesn't really make sense to me. But I guess we'll have to wait and see how both of them do against actual real fighters. But now before I go, I'm going to shout out some comments from my video on entitled TikTokers. Little Flair T said, "To be fair, if I went to a party and a Dixie D'Amelio song comes on, I would also be embarrassed." Yeah, it's not great music. Then Zorg said, "I think all TikTok stars should be canceled and lose their fame, because there's no way you're gonna be famous from just bobbing your head side to side." Completely agree. They need to start, developing some real talent very soon. I don't think a lot of them are gonna be canceled though. I think they're just gonna kind of like fizzle out over time. Then Bookworm Geek said, "They're like 4-year-olds throwing tantrums. When they do get in trouble, they only get a slap on the wrist." That is true. I feel like they do a lot of very bad things, but they don't get that much of a punishment, but that might be changing soon, who knows. Alright guys, that's all for the video today. Thank you so much for sticking around if you made it all the way here. If you liked the video and want to see some more, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel below. Also check us out on social media. I've been your host, Mackenzie Smith, and I will see you all in the next one.